Hey everyone, Happy New Year and welcome to another edition of Ask NP Deidre. We have nurse practitioner Deidre Arms, who is here, her YouTube channel, youtube.com/the @ Ask NP Deidre. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to her channel, subscribe to our channel, which is youtube.com/the @ the way to my heart. Every time you like the video, subscribe to our channel. You help to drive this information further. If it's helpful for you, you know it'll be helpful for so many other people, because today we are going to be talking about the supplements you need to consider for the new year. These are ones that are going to be part of your New Year's resolution to improve your circulation, to improve your heart health, as well as your leg health, and maybe even increase your longevity. We all want to live a longer, healthier life, and NP Deidre is going to share some of her favorites with us, but just remember the advice and views offered, educational purposes only. Always, always, always check with your own doctor to make sure that whatever supplements you are taking are right for you and that there aren't any contraindications with the medications that you are on. So not only talk to your doctor, but talk to your pharmacist as well before starting any new supplement regimen. Do not act on any advice here without the explicit consent of your healthcare team. With that being said, nurse practitioner Deidre, happy New Year. I want to hear your supplemental resolutions for 2026.
Okay. Well, Happy New Year, everybody. Happy to be back, and I hope you all had a great New Year's and Christmas season as well. So it was pretty peaceful for me, and it gave me a lot of time to be thinking about, intentional things that we should be doing, because oftentimes in my office, I get people coming with literal, like, moving boxes full of supplements. And my goal is to help them understand food is medicine, how to eat the rainbow, how to get things through food, but then narrow it down to what they need. And so we were talking about vascular health, and one of the big things is nitric oxide, which is from beetroot. It's a dietary supplement. And so earlier today, I didn't even, this is before I talked to you, know we were going to be talking about vascular stuff, but we did a little video on this. I don't know if you can see it. So we were testing nitric oxide in the office for all of us to see where our levels were. And you get nitric oxide from beetroot, coffee, dark chocolate. You know how much we love dark chocolate around here.
Yes, we do.
So,
But Heinz in our live studio audience is going to warn us about the metals or the they're in
that's
some of
true.
those chocolates. So make sure you check.
Yeah. And we live in a toxic world, right? So we can, sometimes we have to have an indulgence and not think about everything, right?
Yep.
That's just the way it is. But
The benefits outweigh the risks when it comes to dark chocolate.
And when we think of what beetroot and nitric oxide does, so it helps to relax the blood vessels, and it helps that endothelial function, and it lowers blood pressure. So when I have a patient come into the clinic here, and if they've got blood pressure issues and they're wanting to do some natural things, but they're, on the medication too, I'll test their nitric oxide, because if it's low, that is something that we can do to help improve levels here. And so the strip here, you literally put it on your tongue for like 5 seconds.
And you can get these on Amazon. It looks like the ones she has are from Designs for Health, which is a high quality brand, very pure brand. And then what do you do?
And then you just fold it. Like, the pads have to touch together, and you hold them for like 10 seconds here. And then it's really easy to test it, because a lot of times we use supplements, like you were talking about, one that you took and you didn't feel any difference from it. Like, how do we know what's making a difference? With vitamin D, we know we can test that. Inflammatory markers we can see, but it's hard to know, like, am I putting my money into something that's going to help? And so then you look at the strip, and I don't know if you can see how bright that is, but I did supplement with nitric oxide, because earlier today mine was pretty pale. And these are the different colors here to tell if I have adequate. So the darker the pink, the more adequate nitric oxide in the body. And there are a few studies that actually support that. Some of the brands that I've used have been like the Berkeley Life brand, and that N101 nitric oxide brand, they actually have shown the improvement of raising nitric oxide levels in the body with using it. So that's one that I like to use. But really, if you're looking food as medicine, like beets all day long, beetroot, adding that into your diet, like really looking at, we don't have to supplement everything. We can be using this through the diet.
It's interesting. It seems as though with this nitric oxide, it seems to be a roller coaster throughout the day, and your body and your whole goal would be to keep it consistent. I didn't
Yes.
really think about it until I'm just hearing you right now, because my dad's doctor has him taking no beats, some lozenges in the morning, I think it is, and then he has a packet he puts in water that he takes at night. And so I didn't realize that maybe that's why throughout the day, because I guess when you're working out and such, you want a little extra. And so when
Mhm.
he's working out in the morning, he has it right before he works out. And then afterwards, like right before dinner, he does the other one, the no beats in powder.
Yeah, and so beetroot is like the number one thing that we know that raises nitric oxide. But like we said, dark chocolate can do it. Even a really nice, rich polyphenol coffee can. And so when you're looking at coffee, you're looking for a pure coffee that has like tested for mold and things like that. So there's several great brands out there. I know that I've tested my nitric oxide like an hour after a good cup of coffee, and it's been nice and high. So just adding it into what you're doing every day as often as you can, looking how we can improve our health just through food or if we need to supplement. But I did supplement today, and you've seen how fiery pink that was.
I love it. But there, you can't overdo. Can you talk about where to draw the line for people and if there are any contraindications?
Yeah, and so drawing the line is we're looking at like what's a good level. That studies shown about 200 to 400 milligrams of nitrate a day will increase nitric oxide and lower your BP. So we don't want to be taking a supplement with something like a blood pressure med that's lowering it. So you want to be monitoring your body, whatever you are doing, right? You don't want to take something that's going to lower blood pressure and get yourself into a crisis if blood pressure is something you're struggling with.
Yeah, that's so important. Okay. What's another favorite of yours? I think I have one that might be yours, mine, and maybe one of our vascular surgeons, Dr. James Antazana. And you can get it in a fun way by drinking wine, or you can get it in a more concentrated way, which is in a pill, and it's resveratrol. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm a fan of resveratrol. As we know, a majority of my patients are menopausal women, and so most of them are on something with resveratrol and not red wine because that depletes your glutathione for 4 hours to zero after one glass of alcohol. So I don't recommend alcohol for your resveratrol, but it increases nitric oxide too. So that's why it's so important. And whenever we increase nitric oxide, we are helping the endothelial cells. And so that's really important for that vasodilation that happens, lowering the blood pressure and everything. So in perimenopause and menopause for my patients, I do use some products with resveratrol in it. I think that's hugely beneficial. Um,
Can you talk about, and I want to make sure that there's a disclaimer here that, if nurse practitioner Deidre is getting any sort of payment by companies, she would tell you, but she is not getting any payment, from like Designs for Health. It's just one of her favorite brands. She's talked about it for 10 million years. It has a lot of evidence for their products. But I'm curious, is that where you would get the resveratrol, or is there any picks? And I always ask this question not to try and sell it for people, or for the companies. We're not marketing for companies. I really want to know because I'm going to buy the one that you suggest, just because my doctor said you can use resveratrol. They don't give any suggestions as to which ones, except to say make sure that they're high quality ones. And so I always know that you do your research. So I want to know, which one should I get?
Yeah, so the brands that I trust and that I know have a lot of clinical evidence and what they sell, Designs for Health is one. You know that what they are putting in their product is actually what you're getting. Like sometimes you can buy a supplement over the counter, and vitamin D is a big one, right? You can get it anywhere, but they've tested many products where vitamin D isn't even what it says in it doesn't have, because supplements aren't FDA regulated, but there's many brands that are high quality. So Designs for Health, Orthomolecular, Metagenics, Thorne, those ones would be the brands I would look at first. There's some Berkeley Life, like those brands are really pushing these high quality things. But what you're looking for, I've seen somebody just ask about like what's the dosage of resveratrol that you would be using there. And so typically in some of the studies that were like human studies, it was 100 to 500 milligrams a day for about 8 weeks to 6 months in the study. So it kind of ranged what they were finding there. But there
Mhm.
are some providers that push up to 1,000 milligrams a day. So you really want to work with somebody who knows you best and what you need to be taking.
And we do have a comment coming in from YouTube, one of our longtime fans, and he's just a wonderful guy. Robert, he ended up with an amputation just on December 9th. And he's curious if there are any supplements that would help, in healing. There's so much that goes on in the process of healing a wound from an amputation, but also to increase circulation because you're not as mobile. Any thoughts on some possibilities that he could take notes on and bring to his doctor to have the discussion on?
Yeah, I would definitely talk about nitric oxide with them. Anti-inflammatory, so really looking at your CoQ10 and your omegas, really good things to be adding in. I'm a big fan of peptides for healing, BPC 157. Like when you start to look at the studies, they are as there's a plethora of studies out there, very similar to insulin, and insulin is a peptide as well, but that's body protection compound. And there's some, you know, we're not using it all the time, but there are like supplement forms of it. And I've had great success with my patients who have avoided surgeries, who have healed from surgeries faster, who have had injuries where they've healed faster. So I would talk to them about a peptide too, and then always looking at things like your omegas, CoQ10, nitric oxide.
So I learned something about CoQ10. I wondered if you could go into a little bit. One, I know there's a test, so you can actually get tested. You always hear those commercials where the statin commercials where they say you need CoQ10, or you have CoQ10 commercials that say if you're on a statin, it depletes CoQ10 levels and you need these CoQ10 supplements. And I remember when my mom got her testing from Boston Heart Diagnostics, they did a CoQ10 test. I had never even known that you could get a CoQ10 test. So it's worth asking and knowing your levels. And I would imagine that you would even concur that maybe twice a year, get that when you get your regular blood work, get a CoQ10 level test, because I didn't realize how beneficial it is to the body. And in Japan, I think it's Japan, they get CoQ10 naturally in ways that we don't because of the dietary choices that we make.
Yeah. And so CoQ10, there's a lot of studies with it lowering when we are on a statin. How many people with PAD are on statins? Like the majority, right? Because we want to keep, cholesterol low in that situation, but we do deplete CoQ10. And so that's important to replace it. But you're right. Boston Heart is an amazing like lab. Like there's so many
Mm.
great things about them, but some of these things like CoQ10 can be done through other labs outside of Boston Heart. Your provider just needs to know how to order those. And I'm a big fan of the omega-3, omega-6 index because we have this huge omega-6 rich diet when we need to have more omega-3. And so that index to tell us where we are with that, getting enough omega-3s and like salmon, fish, things like that every day to be eating. We tend to eat more, nuts, almonds, things like that that are more omega-6. So you can also test for that.
I just made a really good recipe yesterday on accident. I was supposed to make a vegetable lasagna for my dad because when we were on the cruise, literally our staple was eating eggplant parmesan every single day, but it was eggplant with freshly made sauce, freshly, cut up tomatoes, roasted tomatoes,
Mm.
and they only put a little bit of parmesan on top. It was all, fresh parsley and oregano and things like that to flavor it, and it was just absolutely delicious. So my dad last night was craving that, and I ended up with a call from our new diabetic educator, Jean Chen. She's amazing. She's now in our group, and she's a retired podiatrist. And we started just chit chatting. Oh my gosh, amazing story. She's coming on our show on Saturday to share her journey from Taiwan to the US. And from retired podiatrist, she had to give up her practice because she got in a car accident and hurt her spinal cord. And so she could no longer practice in the way that she wanted. And she became a diabetes educator. Anyway, so it became almost 7 o'clock last night, and I was like, oh my God, I still have not fixed my dad dinner. So I grabbed a piece of wild salmon out of the freezer, soaked it a little bit. I put some chicken broth or chicken stock, no sweeteners, no preserve, no nothing in there, just chicken stock into the pot with a little bit of olive oil, sauteed some mushrooms, I cut up, this is the first time I've done this. I got raw beets and they have the leaves on them. And I rinsed the leaves on the beets and I chopped those up with a little bit of the root and put those in there. I put some fresh tomatoes in there and fresh oregano. And then I cut up salmon just when I thought it was done. I cut up the salmon and I put it in there and had a nice little stir fry. My dad was like, I bet you can't do this again. I said, yeah, I have no idea what I did. I literally just took the kitchen sink and I threw it in there. It was a little bit of an experiment, but it was delicious. And because I waited to the end to pop the salmon in, it was perfectly cooked, not overcooked. It did not taste fishy. Heinz, I'm going to pick on him again in our live studio audience. It was not fishy. You would like it. I would close your eyes and you would not even know. Anyway, he's going to unmute in a moment and start yelling at me.
Ictophobia is what he said. Ictophobia.
There are ways you can get that salmon down. Anyway, I was actually impressed because I don't like anything fishy and I ate it and it was absolutely delicious. So anyway, I had to share that. Um, but we did have a question that came into our Facebook group, padsupportgroup.org, and someone was asking about if there's anything to the whole, she says, nattokinase trend. She's getting all kinds of Facebook messages about nattokinase.
Yeah, and I do have several patients on nattokinase. It's not something I use all the time for people. There are some studies on it. Hold on here. Had myself a little brain block. So, looking at the studies, there was some PubMed stuff on that on reducing platelet aggregation. So I had looked at that. That was so people with low blood flow, it can support low blood flow and reduce clot risk, is what we're seeing in some of the studies. I always say though, with studies, right? We can almost manipulate it any way we want. That's why you see everybody on the fence one way about using something and somebody else on the fence the other way. But with the nattokinase, there were randomized control trial studies. And so those are more superior studies that we would want to use that showed a modest reduction in the blood pressure. So if you're having that stage 1 hypertension, it'd probably be a good go-to. So.
Good, but always again, ask your doctor, make sure to check with your pharmacist. There are a lot of things that your pharmacist knows that your doctor may not know about these medications. So just a good little tip there. Before I start any supplements, I go to my pharmacist and I say, hey, would you mind making sure and looking at these too? Okay,
Yeah.
what about NMN? NMN. One of our vascular surgeons says it is part of his anti-aging protocol that he tells all of his vascular patients to take.
Yeah, so there's a huge push for these longevity type things, right? So we want to live not just a long life, but we want to live a life that's high in quality. So there's a lot of research and studies and stuff going into how can we do that? How can we optimally live and live less with disease? And NMN is actually a direct precursor to NAD. And so that's truly a coenzyme of your cellular metabolism, DNA repair, and females that can help with progesterone improvement. I've had it help people with sleep. But as we age, so from 20 years old to our fifth and sixth decade, your NAD levels decline, right? And so this whole NMN, this precursor to NAD, as NAD depletes, we know that there's less cellular resilience. You can have mitochondrial dysfunction and everything. What I have seen and the conferences that I have been to, they say a lot of it is instead of doing the precursor, it's better to do NAD because just go for it. Some people do not convert that precursor into NAD. Like it doesn't actually raise the NAD levels. And so that's where everybody's on the fence. Like precursor, not precursor. Should I do the NMN? Should I do NAD? I actually just do NAD with people who I'm working with. I skip the precursors. So.
And we have Marilyn. She is asking about the nattokinase, going back to that, and if it affects the kidneys negatively at all. It has a lot of benefits for the kidneys that you were talking about with blood pressure reduction, inflammation reduction as well. But for people who may not realize that natto is a traditional Japanese food made by fermented soybeans, and that's a staple in many Japanese diets. And so there was a study that I had just read that showed that the Japanese that stayed in Japan and maintain, their traditional food habits, such as eating um, these fermented soybeans, but also the organ meats, like that would
Oh,
help with CoQ10 levels.
yeah.
Um, those people live longer, healthier lives without problems with their arteries. And then they studied those versus the Japanese that came to the US and started developing our habits and reducing the organ meats, not really eating the organ meats and whatever else has the CoQ10 in it. But also, they're not eating the fermented soy anymore. And so they're seeing a huge difference in their long-term health, or should I say short-term health
Yeah.
with them. So I don't know if I've never looked for fermented soybeans. Have you ever looked in the store for those?
I actually haven't. I don't know that I've ever seen them. I usually look for fermented foods, just because it's good to be having those as your, you know, prebiotic, probiotic, postbiotic. Like you wanting to feed the microbiome, fermented foods are really good
Yeah.
for that. So,
But careful if you're have hyperthyroidism, right, with those fermented foods. You got to
yeah,
be very careful.
it's never a
So
one size fits all. And with that
yeah,
nattokinase, the only like real thing that I watch out for, like truly, like I'm like, do you have von Willebrand, like the clotting disorder? That wouldn't be somebody I would supplement with it. So those,
yeah. And something everybody always asks about, they ask about their D3, K2, MK7, or D3K plus or D3K2. What in the world? And I actually changed my vitamin D habits because you told me to take my vitamin D3, K2, MK7 along with my magnesium at night. And so I've started doing that.
okay. Yeah, and so vitamin K is really helpful for vascular, and it does help raise up that vitamin D level. So that's why there's a lot of forms of that together. So I usually, and we've talked about this before, sometimes I will start with just vitamin D with people because if I can raise their level with just vitamin D, I'm not adding other things. If that's not happening, we add in vitamin K. Sometimes I'll do micronutrient testing to just see what the need is for somebody. And then we had talked about before, like MK7 form being a little more superior form of that vitamin K2 there. So options. You have options, and it's clear as mud every time you look at something or like what's best for you. And I'm a big fan of decreasing what you're doing and really honing in on what can we eat. Like you said, is there fermented soybeans and stuff? Can we find those or can we make
Yeah.
those?
Yeah, we're gonna actually we're gonna give Heinz that task to try and find us some fermented soybeans and make him try them first. Because
Yeah.
I know how much he loves all of that kind of stuff, the legumes and the vegetables and all of the above. I'm seeing him cringe at me. Heinz, you can unmute and let us know to stop picking on you, but we love you. He's here at every single in studio event, which is really fun. We love having him. But what about there was a brand new company out called Step One Foods, and it was developed by a cardiologist. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's basically they're snacks that are built upon two key supplements, psyllium husk and plant sterols. And they went to the Mayo Clinic and said, hey, I want we want to make sure this is legit. We want to know if these foods can actually reduce cholesterol just as well as statins. And it turns out they did a pretty darn good job, and Mayo actually came out with the study on it. But the two key factors were psyllium husk and plant sterols. Now, Step One Foods is pretty expensive, right? 100 and something a month to get those snacks. But I would think that you could get the right plant sterols and psyllium husk, in regular foods you can get at the store every day. Maybe even just some Metamucil, right, for the one, at a lower cost than what it would be to subscribe to One Step Foods. But if you're
Um,
lazy and you just want to do it, read
yeah.
the study, it's up to you.
Yeah, so I've talked to my lipidologist about predominantly plant-based diets. Like, what's the study say? And I was like real people. If somebody goes predominantly plant-based, is it going to improve their cholesterol levels? And he was like, hands down, yes, it does. And we know that the studies show increasing your fiber. So women should have 35 grams of fiber a day, men should have 45 grams. I guarantee, even on a perfect diet, if you're putting in your macros and everything, you're not getting that. And so supplementing with the right type of fibers is good if you need to be doing that. But yeah, a predominant plant-based diet is going to give you that. I'm not saying don't eat meats. I'm a fan of protein too, but if depending on your disease state and what you need to be shifting, thinking about that too. And really it boils down to less ultra processed.
I mean, overall, no matter what
Yeah.
you want to do it. And that's also why I'd say, don't buy someone else's packaged foods. Look at the key ingredients and then make your own.
Mhm.
Because I think that that is an even better option. Because no matter what, when you put something in a package, there has to be something that they don't have to put on the package label, that you're going to end up putting in your body that is probably not the best. Your body probably won't recognize it, and the risk might outweigh the benefits in it causing inflammation in your body. So you got to be really careful with anything packaged. That's what we mean by processed. Go natural if you can. But you can there are plant sterols out there. I know my dad was able to reduce his cholesterol by taking supplemental psyllium husk and plant sterols. But I know plant sterols aren't right for everyone, because if you have, I think it's if you do have the inflammation in your arteries, you do just have to be careful with the supplementation.
Yeah.
I think that's the issue, right?
Hmm. Yeah. So
What
lots
else
to
do
be
we
thinking
have?
about. There's lots to
Yeah,
be thinking about, right? I think that those are like really great supplements and evidence-based stuff that we've we've talked about already to start somewhere there, but really talking to your provider about what's best for me.
yep.
Um,
And I think that that's a lot. I think that we've covered a lot. I want to encourage everybody to go ahead, like this video so we can get the word out there on with this great information you can't find anywhere else. But also subscribe to our channels. Do not leave our channels without subscribing to youtube.com/the @ Ask NP Deidre, but also youtube.com/the @ the way to my heart. More great content like this. We have nurse practitioner Deidre that's here every week, and you're starting a 60-day wellness educational series, right? Coming up.
Yes, we are. It will have daily drip education with actionable things like working on your stress, working on your sleep, working on, there'll be recipes in there. And it's kind of generic, a one size fits all, but I wanted to kind of integrate a little bit of that into some of this. So if anybody is interested in doing some of that education and working on their own using the recipes, we have some follow up here in our studio just to like complement things that they can do to optimize health. So
Yeah, can they find out more at aspirewih.com?
yes, and I'll be posting that, so probably by next week and everything, to where they can look at that, and even on our social medias, Aspire Wellness Integrative Health.
Fantastic. And next week, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind talking about how we can get, especially women over 50, how do we get 1,000, is it 1,000 milligrams of calcium in our diet daily? I don't understand. And being someone who's anaphylactic to dairy, that's even more difficult than ever. So wondering if that might be a good topic to cover.
Okay, yeah, let's cover calcium.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Nurse Practitioner Deidre. We really appreciate you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Make sure if you want to join our live studio audience, always go ahead and email info@padhelp.org. And you can always call the Leg Saver hotline at 1-833-PAD-LEGS if you want more information about peripheral artery disease, supplementation, and more. Thanks, everyone, for joining us, and Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year.